today I'm going to be talking to Lia Boyland. Lia is the co-founder of Talent Shake, which is a company that builds AI agents for people operations, for the HR side of things. But what's really interesting about this, whilst it's AI, Lia's approach is always to be human first, and it comes across through the way that she talks, in everything that she says and in everything that she does. I'm sure you'll see this for yourself. But Lia Boyland, since we met online, I use my inverted commas, so since I sought you out online and we have met in person since then, but we actually haven't had a chance to talk, which is kind of good because I'm going to talk about it all the stuff I want to talk about now. And today you're one of the people that I get to talk to that we cover tech, and we'll cover neurodivergency, and we'll cover parenting and whatever else comes up in this conversation, which kind of crosses all of the goals of what I like to talk about on this podcast anyway. But what I want to start with is some of the tech side of stuff. And before we get into Talent Shake, actually tell me, how did you where did your beginning start that took you to the Talent Shake side of things?
Oh yeah, wow. I mean, like, I have pretty much had every single job.
Meet your sister.
All the jobs. I mean, I think my first official job was, babysitter at the age of 12, house cleaner for a prison guard who had an extremely messy house at the age of 14.
Wow.
It was very interesting. Even had to sort through like the letters and like vast amount of parking tickets that were never paid. But anyway, I won't go into all... better. Yeah, exactly. I won't go into all those details, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just kind of happened. But probably the first time I got exposed to the tech world was when I was working in Bank of Ireland, managing a co-working space. Mm-hmm. And there was numerous events happening on a weekly basis, and there was a number of tech events. So that was my first exposure, and everything sounded like absolute gibbly gobble. But I just kept listening. And then eventually it started to make sense. And yeah, it was just interesting. And I've always, like, my mom was a total feminist. So I've always, I definitely have a big inner feminist here. But in a healthy, balanced way. And that just equality is very, very important to me. So I started to recognize quite early on that there was this big disparity around, how many... The most common profile in tech being a white man. I mean, I've got nothing against white men. I'm married to one. But
same as.
Just, we need to have more diversity in the things that are impacting our life, which is technology. So eventually, I mean, I first started my own business back in nearly 10 years ago now. And then I decided that journey wasn't working anymore for me at that time. And then a couple of jobs later, after recruitment, and then going back into the startup journey again, actually met my husband on Tinder. And that was one of the reasons why we connected, was because we both had just started to finish our startup journeys, our tech startup journeys. And and then, kind of went from there. So we both knew we wanted to start something again at one point. But I guess sometimes you kind of need that push. And so he was made redundant in November 2022. I lost all my recruitment, HR, customers in January 2023 because of the mass layoffs that were happening.
Of course, yeah.
And then that's what really pushed us. We were like, well, do we want to go work for somebody else again? Hell no. We need to try and make this work, try and figure it out. So, I mean, here we are. It's nearly 2 years later. Like the first year was very much around R&D, having a baby. So,
because you needed another challenge,
needed another challenge, another startup. Just because, why not? So yeah, we've really been working on this since January of this year. But I think one of the things that pushes me every single day, and I don't even know I'm answering your question anymore.
Oh, you're answering it, and many more. But this is the thought process I enjoy. Not even just answering the question, it's the thought process, because if you can directly answer my question, And that can be interesting. But sometimes it's when the things that are popping into your head as you go, tell me more about the experience of getting there, if that makes sense. Because those are things that are at the forefront of your mind when you start talking about the journey. So they're important. And were you not terrified? I got to ask that because people say to me a lot of late, they're like, so what are you going to, because I was made redundant recently. And I'm thinking about what to do next. And they're like, would you work for yourself? And I always get this feeling in the pit of my stomach. I'm like, but then the book stops with me. And that absolutely terrifies me. It's not that I couldn't do it or do well in it. It's the responsibility, I suppose, says she with 4 children. Like, what kind of responsibility is bigger than that? But did you feel, is it a feel the fear and face it anyway? Or were you confident from the off?
One of the things that my mom gave me was this unwavering confidence, which is amazing. That's definitely there. Now, self-esteem and confidence, right? 2 different things. Self-esteem is definitely something I'm working on. And when you start a business, like, oh my God, you have absolutely no choice but to completely look at yourself because you are the business, right? Yeah. And so if you're not looking after your own mental health, your own emotional health, then things will just fall to the wayside. And that's one of the things that's really hard, but I really, really love it. And I do, like, even when we are absolutely broke, one of the things I prioritize is mental health. And I have my sessions with my counselor every two weeks. So that doesn't go anywhere. So on one hand, yes, am I terrified? But interestingly enough, I'm more terrified of being successful.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I don't know why. It's really, really strange. Like, you realize the only thing that's going to hold you back is yourself, because there's really, like, anything is possible. But as soon as you realize that, you're like, okay, wow, this is, that's the thing that you have to overcome, is that mental side of things. Is it a big responsibility? 100%. But for some reason, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's my upbringing and my husband as well. Like, we came from humble beginnings, where there were times where our parents did lose absolutely everything. And we were able to see that, what, actually, as long as everybody is healthy, you've got food, you've got a roof over your head, like, those are the most important things. So while it is terrifying, at the same time, we're so privileged where we are. And it's just constantly remembering those things. Now, would I tomorrow go and hire loads of people if I could? Probably not right away, no. Like, I would want to work on the foundations of that business for a long time, because that is a huge responsibility, taking on all of those people. So, it's being able to kind of recognize those 2 things. I'm willing to put myself on the line because I know I'll always figure it out. But first I need to build some really strong foundations before I'm willing to put other people's lives on the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. It's a real human approach to it. I find myself saying things like that a lot, but the more people that I talk to, whether it's in the tech world or just in the world in general, the more far removed the human aspect is from a lot of things that people do. And I really think that the red tape between, or the ribbon, not red tape, the ribbon between you doing a really good job and, making good money and living a good life and just making a big difference and doing awesome things and living a fantastic life, is whether or not you continue to keep the human in, whether it's in here or in the business and everything you do, that you consider that along the way. Because so many businesses just, their souls go to die when they think only about the monetary aspects or only about the technical aspects. And it happens all the time, which is why I find myself saying all the time, where's the human aspect of this? Because people connect with people. So I love, that's really human, that thought process and that approach. And I think clients surely feel that, and people will warm to that. And then Talent Shake is using AI technology, right?
Yeah.
So what is it doing? How is it using it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, should I explain AI agents? I mean, AI agents has become definitely, like, we started talking about AI agents last year and people were like, what the hell are you talking about? Maybe you should use a different word. People are going to be confused. They don't know what, they're like, what the hell? But now this year, people are starting to recognize, oh, wait a minute, there's a difference between a bot, a co-pilot, an assistant, and an agent. So maybe just for people listening, I'll just go
what's the difference?
So like your bot is going to be answering your FAQs on your website, for example.
Yeah.
And then in between, you can have your co-pilot, could be something like Google Maps, that's helping you with one particular task, how to get from A to B. Whereas your agent is all the way on the other side of the spectrum and can conduct more complex tasks for you.
Yeah.
And in between can do some stuff by itself as well,
Cool.
in order to be able to get to the end result. So the big vision is to build a suite of AI agents to automate within HR. But to begin with, we're just focusing on 3 AI agents, and we've given them all names just to have a little bit of fun and to be
Of
able
course.
to
Humanize
differentiate them. Yeah,
it.
exactly. Instead of AI agent 1, 2, 3. But yeah, so far we've got for learning and development, Helen D. Helen D can answer questions on vast amounts of training material. Then we have Harry. Harry is your HR that answers the common HR queries. And then the last one that we're not ready yet is called Tina, and Tina is for TNAs, which is to conduct a training needs analysis. But I'll just focus on Helen D because this is the first one that's going to be ready for testing and to go to the market. So say, for example, you've just went through some training within your team, and now you're ready to, put some of that training into action when you're on the job. You're in the job and you're like, oh, sugar, what was that again? That I learned during that training last week that I want to apply now on the job. So you go and you go and start chatting with Helen D. And you're like, hey, Helen D, what do I do here in this situation? Helen D will go to that vast amount of training, get that data, and then come back and answer that question for you. And what it's doing in that moment is it's helping you to apply that learning on the job.
Yeah.
Get that information. And it's just automating that particular process where usually people would be going to their learning and development team to get that data, or they'd spend ages searching through places to be able to get it.
That's a lot faster, yeah, if she's going to tell you what to do than sifting through all of the documents that you got maybe throughout training. Like,
yeah, exactly. So that's what we're doing so far, just in a high level overview. So it's simple to start with. We're early stages, but eventually we will. The long term vision is to go into more of the deep tech side of things. But for now, this is the focus
I
on what
like
it's
it. I'm trying to think. I'm like, other than the likes of Siri, and I haven't seen people give names to the AI bits before. And like I say, with agents, it's good to hear the difference in the agents. And yeah, it feels more like having a colleague. Like I was jesting with somebody last week going, ChatGPT is fast becoming my work colleague, mostly because I don't have one. But also I find myself saying please and thank you and asking ChatGPT's opinion on a lot of things. As opposed to right answers, just like, what do you think of this?
Yeah, totally. I do that all the time, like for a huge variety of things, be it from work to personal to just curiosity.
And the opinion's no righter or wronger than if you were talking to Joe Bloggs at the other side of the table. Like, it's still just an opinion, and I think it helps you think more broadly when you've got somebody or something to interact with like that. I love that they've got names.
Totally.
When you were developing it then, like, what were the biggest challenges that you were finding, and what did you do to get around them or over them as such?
Yeah, some of the biggest challenges, like even, nearly 6 months ago now, like we were ready to go with Harry that answers the repeatable HR questions.
Mm-hmm.
We had like a number of customers lined up to start doing trial programs within their organization. And then just before we get ready to go, like all of them pull out of the process because there was a huge amount of fear. Now, not everyone was totally upfront around what the fears were. My assumption is most of them came back with security. We want you to be ISO certified, which is nearly impossible when you're an early stage startup. Because
it's a big old booklet of rules, like,
huge. And, they're going to be combing through your code, which is totally going to change by the time, like this is just MVP first first version. And it's not like we hadn't thought it through. Like I was the one to actually bring it up with them and let them know, look, this is what we've thought through. You're going to be within your own server, like the data is only being processed. It's not like ChatGPT where when you put the data, it goes in and it's fine tuning. No, this data is only being processed. So we went through all of those pieces, but it just wasn't enough. My assumption is that part of the fear was, what if the AI gets it wrong in terms of answering questions? And when the HR team are being asked questions, sometimes those questions can be sensitive from a people perspective.
Of course,
so
it's HR. Yeah,
exactly, it's HR. And there's a lot of other competitors already doing this automating this particular process out there. Like IBM, for example, have one called Ask HR. So it's not like it's absolutely new, but yes, there's just fear. So that was a little bit tough. That's what got us to pivot and look at learning and development first. As a startup, I think it just makes more sense. Learning and development, well, of course, it's extremely beneficial for organizations and needed. It's not as necessarily serious as HR, if that makes sense, because you don't have people asking about, they could be bringing up anything like to do with harassment or
individuals specifically, whereas that's more like applying tools to needs in that sense.
Totally. Yeah.
So you mentioned that they have their own data. So they have their own data set, and is it using like that the language modeling, like is it learning based on everything that they're putting in it specifically to their needs, or is there is that the goal, or how is that happening?
Yeah, eventually what we would love to do is either try and find an LLM that we can use that fully aligns with, what we want to do in the long term, or even create our own LLM. Or like eventually what's going to happen is a lot of companies will have their own LLM.
Yeah.
So that it can be, from that security perspective, it's all isolated within their own space. So then we'll look at doing something like that. But for now, we're just using RAG, which is purely retrieval. So it's not keeping that data, it's only processing that data. But I think that's, and there's a lot of companies using that process within the AI space and across different industries. But I think it's important, right? Because in a sense, we're almost like that buffer that's between any of these large language models. You're acting as that kind of buffer and thinking through the UX and the people on the other side.
So you've come, it's HR that you're working with, and you've come from that background. You've got the technology side of it. Like, you're obviously considering these things. I think I want to say it's a frustration, but it doesn't surprise me. One of the challenges really on the AI side of things is the compliance side isn't keeping up when it's specific to AI. So I feel like it's almost unfair to expect people to be innovative on the side of AI, but also compliant, because they're attempting to be compliant with really static ways of processing data, whereas one thing AI isn't is really static.
No.
So wasn't it only like a year ago where in the EU we said, okay, we're going to start creating AI regulation, and it's like a month ago before the first rules came in place, or was there even more than one? Like, it's moving so slowly, but in the space of that 1 year, even if you look at any of those ChatGPTs and whatever else everyone else is using that's on their phones and on their computers, that's come a long way in a year, that if the regulation is going to move that slowly, it's never going to keep up with. I wonder, what are your thoughts around kind of like dynamic regulation? Do you think it's possible to put something like that in place for AI? That's just a thought from my head.
Dynamic regulation. Sorry, to that your term.
No, I'm just making it up. So what I mean is that where the regulation has room to kind of move and change depending on the needs. So if you think, say, in the space of a year, you'll have where AI stands today. So people start writing the regulation on it based on where AI stands today. But within that regulation, there has to be enough movement to say, well, okay, here's where we're going to limit what people can do, how they're supposed to maintain data privacy or access, or where they store the data, and all the things that people would do that we would deem standard for traditional data sets. but because it's AI, to start writing in, almost like writing in blank words, where you're saying that, but in the event that the data becomes this size, or that there's a need for it to cross several borders, or to, you're trying to anticipate an idea of what it might be like in the future into that regulation, because I can't see that AI regulation will keep up if we don't. Do you think it would be possible to write based on the theory of what's coming?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look throughout the history of time, like
True.
all over the place, we have technology that's far, far ahead of where the laws are today. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff happening that shouldn't be happening. But this
True.
is exactly why it's so important to have more diversity within tech starting companies, because when you have that diversity, you think through how it's going to impact on the lives of the people that will be using that technology.
Yes.
And when you have that type of mindset, and when you think about it from that perspective, that's when you can try to, well, no, not even try. That's when you can make sure that you always think about ethics first. You always think about humans first, and how it's going to be applied. Can you predict the future? No. Can you predict how humans will use it? Unfortunately, no. That's where AI is amazing, right? Because now we've got a tool that can all of a sudden scan through millions of users and see, like, how are people using this, and are they making sure to stay within the parameters of ethics first? And I think that's, when we think from that perspective, I mean, like, that's why just having women is not enough. I mean, it's obviously super, super important, but that's why you need to have, when you think about building a team, you need to have people from many different backgrounds to be able to bring up those biases that you will not be able to see. So I hope that, that's what we're doing. We're working on the foundations of company thinking about the long term, instead of just thinking about the numbers. Obviously, numbers are important because, you want to have investors to be able to stay alive. But
the long-term vision is key. Like, I think there is a tendency for a lot of companies, big or small, to think about what they need for this year and next year, but not to anticipate where that might actually go. And some of it, like you say, could absolutely be down to the fact that they don't have enough different thinkers, a diversity of thought as such in a room, that are saying, well, what if this happens? What are we going to do then if this happens? We have too many people thinking about how it's always happened in the past. So when the next logical step happens and the next logical step happens, but I think what we're fast learning is that the next logical step isn't always one we've anticipated before, or isn't always the next logical step. It's just, it goes off somewhere else. Like, and with that, like, when it comes to HR, like, listening to you talk about the agents and the capability and potential for that kind of technology, how do you see that then shaping the future of the HR side of things?
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to completely change things. And there's a couple of different ways, which at the moment I see two ways in which companies can go. And this is something that I've seen on the market. And this is also something that, I hold very dear to myself in terms of the vision and mission for us. So let's look at one side. Let's look at Company A. Company A could decide, you know what, we're going to lay off a whole bunch of folks, and we're just going to now automate loads of these functions. That's happening, unfortunately. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
That's one way in which companies can go. Good luck to you in terms of the culture that you're building. Or you can look at it the other way, which is, how can we use AI to help enhance our workforce? Enhance the most important asset that we have within our organization, our people.
Yeah.
And it's not always about keeping people. It's about helping people win while they're with you. I always loved it. I can't remember right now. There's this coach that I was watching, and he was just explaining how, I'm going to help someone be so successful within this role that one day they're going to want to leave. And that's okay.
That should be the goal. Yeah,
exactly. How can you help them be productive now when they're with us? That's way more important. So the future of AI in HR is that there will be a whole load of work that's automated. But, I know that I'm going to be on the side where it's going to be helping people to enhance them, to be happier, to do a better job. Because, like, unfortunately, when you look at the statistics, and I know because I've experienced it myself, HR is up there with operations in terms of doing most of the grunt work within an organization. Up to 40% of their work can be admin work,
Yeah.
which does have a direct impact on how strategic you get to be, on how innovative you get to be within your role, and how quickly you get to progress within an organization, or how quickly you get to go to burnout. And I know because I've been there a few times. And then you look at another interesting statistic, which is that up to about 75% of people in HR on a global level are women,
Yeah.
or people with a diverse background. So when you think about it from that perspective, they're getting all the crap work.
Yes.
And they're not getting to progress and innovate and be strategic. So I really think we have an amazing opportunity here in order to use AI to help the underdogs within the organization be more strategic and focus more on humans.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Imagine the potential when you take away, like you say, the grunt work, the stuff that's eaten into the time. Like I've often seen when, especially at a time like when there's layoffs or huge growth, and HR are absolutely like just spinning because they're trying to keep on top of all of these things. If a lot of that can be automated either side, like you say, if you're talking about upskilling and enablement and all that kind of stuff, and then HR can focus on the people and how better to retain them and how better to make them better, and that all of that, when people feel content in a company and feel like they're growing and feel respected, then the company's only going to soar because everybody's happy and they're staying there. Like, it seems such a no-brainer when you say it out loud, like, but yet we're not seeing it.
No, we're not.
No.
And when you look at organizations that have higher levels of diversity in terms of the C-level team, the numbers are always better. It just is better. And I know from my own experiences, even managers I've had that are women, their bosses ahead of them were coming to them, giving them all this crap work. And they're staying late in the office doing this crap work. And I'm like, how are you ever going to be able, because they can't say no. And it's just like, so this is why I'm really passionate about it. And this is why I think the future of AI, we have a huge potential to be able to, to uplift people from that perspective.
I love it. And your passion comes across, like, it's real. You can see it on your face. Like, and you've come from background, you said, like, which made me laugh because I'm quite similar in that, I've done every other job before this one, which I think in itself, people can say what they want. I think that brings massive benefits to people when they're later in their career, because you can actually genuinely relate to a lot of people from different backgrounds and a lot of roles from different backgrounds.
Totally.
When you chose to go into the tech side of it and pivot, as we like to say, like, was it difficult? Did you face roadblocks along the way?
Definitely difficult. But I'd already been through it before when I went to study law.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. Like, so I've a bit of a different background in that I didn't have any schooling when I was growing up. And I was homeschooled. I was more like a kind of a wild child.
Oh, look, we got balloons. For homeschooling. Okay, duly noted.
So I just remember being in the classroom. I must have been about 22, 23, and I was studying in the evening time. So it was all like professionals. I was probably one of the youngest there. So they were asking the most intelligent questions. I had no idea what they were asking. Even just the teacher was saying at the bottom of your essay, you need to put references or quote, and I just didn't even know what that was. And I remember asking somebody, what is that? But they couldn't even comprehend that I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
So
way to make somebody feel so stupid, like, and if you're feeling like that, that's going to definitely slow your roll, as they say, like,
yeah, definitely. So that was really like, I was just like, no, I'm going to keep showing up. I kept showing up, and eventually I started to actually understand what they were talking about, and then it became fascinating and interesting. But having gone through that already, entering into the tech world was the same. Everything was gibbly gob. It's like, what people are talking about. But
often
again,
they don't know what they're talking about. That's the bit that always makes me laugh. Often they don't know. People are throwing acronyms around, and if you ask them to explain what they actually mean, they're going,
Yeah, exactly. No, it's hilarious. So no, it was really tough. But the entrepreneurship background piece really, really helped. And I remember being my first time as an in-house recruiter working in a tech company. And the company was like, even most people working there could not explain what they actually did. It was quite complex. So it was, even now I'm like, oh my God, what did they do exactly?
Nothing needs to be that
I know.
difficult, like, you know.
No, it doesn't. But there was a really good exercise, and this is where my entrepreneurship background really helped, which was that as recruiters, we needed to learn how to pitch the company, and
Yeah,
we needed to learn how to explain what the tech did in layman terms. And that going through that process was great.
yeah,
Taking, okay, this is the technology, this is what it does in tech talk, and now translate it into telling a story. And just going through that process was really, really great. And I think after that, that's what helped me. You know, you just always have to do a little bit of research and just go through that translation process, and then go through being able to explain it yourself. And boom, there you go. And that's what helped with that transition. But it was really hard, and I'd just become a mom, and I was trying to keep up with the pace, and it was a scale up, and
that's a lot.
it was very, very intense.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I was unfortunately let go eventually. So that was a tough process to go through. But then it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because then I worked for myself for a while, doing consulting in startups and scale ups. I'm still staying within the tech world, of course, to make it interesting, all the way from IoT to SaaS to Web3, everything.
But then you've got more things that you're understanding, and your knowledge is becoming better around it, because HR is everywhere. It's not just in a handful of industries. Like, so the more you know, the better. And no doubt you're putting that knowledge in to play
Oh,
when you're building your product as well.
yeah, totally. It's just about being curious, always just keeping that curiosity.
That was my picture. Just fell off the wall. Did you see how I just rolled my eyes? Because it's not the first time today that's happened. And I'm totally going to keep it in, because I was like, come on,
That
if
was
you can
great.
see all those? There's
Oh
like,
yeah, the
and up
sticky
at the
thing.
top, there's like super glue, there's nail glue, there's sticky pads, there's blue tack, there's sellotape, there's everything. And that
I
picture
love
won't stay on the wall. I'm sorry. I think we weren't in one of these like deeply, you know, personal moments. It's upset.
awkward.
I'll fix that later. But you were talking about there how hard it is to learn in the beginning. And I mean, I've often met people and they're going, "Oh, you know, you must know so much because I've worked in it for so long." And for starters, that means nothing. Some people can blag for a very long time and they're just really good at it. But I have learned a lot over the years. But man, have I cried over it. Like when I went into cybersecurity first, I remember we didn't have an office for the Irish side of it yet, about a year before we did.
Yeah,
And I used to work in my mum's house to make it feel like I was going to an office, because I'd never done remote work before.
yeah,
And many a day, I think at least once a day, I cried in the beginning because I couldn't understand anything anybody was saying to me. I had come from a really Windows, like it was an entirely Windows background, and I was going into
yeah,
an industry where it was 85, 90% Linux. And I didn't, like, people were talking, they were using all the acronyms, and I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, and Googling like crazy. I'd get off the call, I'd have all these notes to try and figure out what the hell it was, and I would cry about it. And then it was like once a week I was crying, and then it was once a month I was crying over it. And eventually I get to the point where you're going, hang on, I got off a call and I'm like, oh, that made sense, and I understood them, and it was brilliant. And usually when I get all full of myself, then the very next day someone will say something where I'll be like, I don't know what that means. But it's sometimes it's the only way to learn. And I have to
yeah.
remind myself as well that all of those people, there's stuff they don't know. Nobody knows everything.
Sure.
Like, it
Yeah,
could be that it's the rules of rugby, or that
yeah,
it's how to bake, or they've never changed a nappy in their life. But there's stuff they don't know and I know.
yeah.
So, and I can do this. I've learned all of the hard stuff once. And, you know, when you know you've done it once, even if it's, you know, not tech related, then you know you can do it again. It's just getting through it. Like, man, I must have like shed an ocean of tears over it. And I wouldn't tell anyone, because I damned if I wanted them to think I didn't know.
I know exactly what's going on.
I did not want anybody to know. Like, so doing everything that you've done then with Talent Shake so far, then what's been the most rewarding moment? The best part?
Oh, so many. So many. I
Really?
mean, like, we've got a nice big team of advisors now. We've got seven people that have jumped on board.
Great.
That's been super exciting. Every time someone has, you know, jumped on board, and they're willing to yeah, just to come as part of that journey, you know. It's like I think it's huge validation. Each one of them has fantastic background and helping us with a variety of different areas. From like we have one lady, Joni, who started working in the implementation of AI and HR nearly 10 years ago, which is
Yeah.
just
Wow.
fantastic to get those insights, right? I mean, it's been around a long time. It's just the big
Yeah.
hype is only the last couple of years.
Of course.
Um, all the way from, you know, marketing, sales, entrepreneurs. Latest person we've just had join us, Gary, he's got 20 years experience consulting within the call center space, so he's coming on board as a partner to help us get into that
I love it.
market, you know, as strategic advice as well,
It's like
which
the
is really
biggest compliment, like, isn't it? Because it's not just, I mean, you can be making the most sensational, fantastic product in the world, but at the end of the day, if they think you're an asshole, they're not going to get behind you. So it has to be not just that the tech is fantastic, but they have to feel a passion towards what you're trying to achieve as a human as well. Like, and that's really the ultimate, like, compliment, isn't it?
huge compliment, huge
Right.
compliment. You know that they're giving their time and their wisdom, and yeah, just coming on board for that journey. But the other highlights has been getting our first angel investor. Was just like, wow,
Yay.
at a time when we were really like, crap, we don't know how we're going to survive. You know, one of the things that's not really talked about very often in Ireland is that there's really crap supports for when you're self-employed.
Oh my God, I was literally just thinking that. I was going to say it when you finished your sentence. Like,
It's
you're not,
worse.
that's what's most terrifying. I think it's like you can put yourself out there and fail, but if there's a safety net to catch you, like, it's a
Oh,
lot easier. And I think we'd be so much more creative and have so many more ideas and so many more new businesses, and we would be absolutely showing everybody what we're made of in Ireland if there was some support system there. But I've only learned over throughout COVID from friends that were self-employed, and it was different during COVID because there was some supports given to
yeah.
people. But exactly, like, there's nothing, a big vast nothingness if you screw up, like, and I think that's part of the fear factor, like, for me. And how do you do that? Like, do you just pretend? Like, how? 'Cause other
No,
companies, like in the UK, you can do it and it can fail and you can pick yourself up and do it again next year, kind of thing. Like, it's like you get, as if it's not enough if something goes wrong, you get kicked in the backside for it then as well for a longer period of time over here. I personally just don't think it's very supportive of people who work for
no.
themselves. But then you actually do it. I don't. So maybe you don't feel that way.
There's not much of a buffer. I mean, when it came to the social system, we just totally gave up on that. We were like,
Yeah.
no, it's plus it was just so depressing and making you like go to the office nonstop and just have to beg
Yeah.
constantly, and you're being told the same thing. Depends who you're in front of. Now I get it. Like their job sucks as well. I mean, I studied about this when I was doing my law degree. But yeah, we gave up on that system. But there are other fantastic supports like the local enterprise office that literally saved us. You know, so between the angel investor and then that was the other highlight, getting a grant with the local enterprise office was just
Brilliant.
knowing that these folks believed in you. And I was talking with two of the ladies from the Cork office, Katie and Eileen. I'll give them a shout out because I think we were chatting for about a year, and just
Yeah.
their support and belief in us and Talent Shake, like really, I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't know where we'd be without all of that support. It was just fantastic.
I love
Um, a huge help. So yeah, I think those have been some of the biggest highlights. And then just talking to our customers, you know, conducting customer discovery and doing that research and getting them to test the tool. It's just really exciting. And then every day, like the brain is just constantly on the go, like new ideas coming up. Just that itself is like extremely exciting. So I'd say there's highlights every day. It's hard
it.
to pinpoint, if that makes sense.
I know, I love it. If there was, for anyone that's listening to this who's either thinking
Yeah.
about making that pivot into tech from another background, or is new to career, or new to their own business or anything, is there any kind of like words of wisdom you'd share with them?
Yeah, I think like just do it. just go for it. For sure, like if there was one thing that I would have done differently in terms of starting a business or going into tech, is to just find someone who's in the space already, go to them, ask loads of questions. No question is stupid. Get a lay of the land, to be able to help you be more successful, because it is going to be hard. There will be, unfortunately, you will come across some biases if you don't come from a traditional background.
Absolutely.
And you just need to, figure out what that fire is in your belly. So that when it is hard, that will keep you going. You'll be like, no, I don't care. I'm going to keep going.
A lot to be said
Um,
for the power of passion, isn't there?
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. And yeah, that's but yeah, I think getting the lay of the land before you dive in is can be a fantastic thing, especially if you want to go and start your own business. Like talking to other founders has just been, like I don't really think we would be where we are without the other founders, to be able to speak to them and figure stuff out as you go.
Good.
Um,
That's good.
and then yeah, going into tech, like don't be afraid, even if it all sounds like gibbly gob. Just keep
Keep
going, keep
going.
listening. Hey, you've got AI now. I mean, it's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like most calls are recorded. Like go back over those transcripts, ask questions, just play around with the technology. Don't be afraid. It is it's like learning a new language, but that's okay. Just got to dive in.
Learning is never a bad thing.
No.
Well, thank you so much, Leah. That has been awesome. I love the passion. I love the drive, and
Oh,
it
thank
makes me
you.
go, wonder what I might do next.
Well, starting a business for the ADHD brain is amazing.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
just
like, I
like,
can think of all the ideas. I just need someone to do all the boring stuff, but maybe I'll just get ChatGPT to.
yeah, just get AI to do it.
Yeah.
100%. Oh,
So what
thank
I'm
you
going
so
to do is
much.
I'll share the link for your company and the link for you and such then in the podcast details. So if anybody does want to get in touch and ask you questions about it, which I'm sure
Yeah.
they will, is that okay?
Yes, please do. Anyone, any entrepreneurs that want to be an entrepreneur, anyone that just wants to get into the tech space, anything at all, I'm always here. I love chatting to people, and there's always something that we can learn from each other. And Jenny, thank you so much. Thank you just for what you're doing as well. You're giving a platform, for the voices, for the underdogs, and I think it's super, super
My
important.
favorite people.
Yes, but we need it, because again, I know I'm like a broken record. And again, white men, nothing against you, but the majority of the really, really big podcasts out there, it's guys talking to guys, and we need more of the underdogs. We need
True.
more of their voice getting out there. So I think it's a really great thing that you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah.
Cool.